Okay, well, my usual Saturday malaise and recovery has been going on. Maybe a little worse than normal today in some ways. Just physically, I was okay. I woke up very late and probably didn't drink too much, but I may have gotten more invested into things like hope last night than there's sort of this wave, you know. Anyway, so first card, we draw the first card that we've drawn, honestly. And that's going to be an additional choice to add a major or minor improvement. Now, if you're going to do a minor, you want this one. But this opens up all the major improvements, some of which can be very, very helpful. Now, I have to familiarize myself with each player because, you know, it's been more than 24 hours, and I can't fucking remember my cards. Again, trying to do these solo games with a lot of hidden information and planning and stuff like that, it doesn't work very well. And that adds to my dislike of the type of game. Again, I don't like these opposed, but I can learn to like a game by playing it solo, right? And I can get comfortable with a game, and then I can enjoy it more opposed because I've gotten a certain comfort level with the decision making I make. So the AP isn't as bad and doesn't get in the way. But this one and others of its ilk, where I have to have all this pre-planning going on and constantly modifying, but whatever. But where there's all this kind of understanding what I'm doing and everything, means that my best tool towards learning to enjoy a game is stripped away from me. All right. I really like a couple of the occupations he has. So since I'm still first player, I'm going to pay to throw the puppeteer out. That means whenever anybody chooses traveling players, it's got to be a different player over here. I get to throw a oh, I didn't do something first. I should put resources out. I'm looking and I'm like, wow, there's only one food there. What's up with that? Okay, I'll catch up with that. But anytime anybody picks this, I get to pay a food and put another occupation down. Of course, what that probably means is people aren't going to pick it. But then it's open to me. And there are some occupations that I have that really work well. And if you look at the first video, you can see. So, yeah, even though it's not improving my position in terms of my machine right now. Enough wood to build fencing. I would like to. I could take a grain, but I can't sow it yet, although I will be able to very soon. Instead, what I did is put this private forest down. That's going to grab me first player, which is cool. But this is going to give me a wood on each remaining even numbered round space. At the start of these rounds, I received the wood. So it would have been nice to do this, I don't know, with one of my pieces last time maybe. Because I would have gotten one here. But instead I'm going to just be putting these going out. And that's actually, you know, this kind of cool investment in the future where I'm going to be getting some additional wood, and I think wood's going to be important to me. I'm going to try to do things not one by one anymore. So there's less starts and stops and other reasons. So this guy put the hut builder down. I put a marker here. He's going to get an additional room for free later in the game. That's a point where adding people becomes more and more desirable. So that can be especially valuable to him. And then this guy grabbed some wood. He has an improvement he wants to make, but doesn't see anyone who's likely to take a major improvement at this point. Someone might still want to do a minor. If that happens, I'll pick something else. I actually didn't need the wood. I'm looking at getting the fireplace here. Oh, this is return fireplace or pay, I guess is what they're saying. That's interesting. I get too lost playing 4 different. I did 2 in a row. For blue, well, one thing to note here, even though the first player markers moved, that's only first player for the round, so he gets to do his choice. And I chose to plow a field, hoping to be able to get grain, so I figure building up some fields will be useful. This guy over here had a number of choices that were appealing, but since I have a plowed field, I'd be able to get the sow action if it comes up next first, so I grabbed myself a grain, paying him. I was also considering buying, I have this thing that lets me drop a stable a little cheap, but then it passes to the next player, which was appealing because I could take the sheep then, but I couldn't because I've already done an action. Players, this one kind of boned his plans by grabbing that improvement. Hey, you know. For a greenhouse, he had wanted this, but had to get the occupation down first. That puts a couple of vegetables on the track for him to just get. Seems like a good thing. So this guy's left with very, very few options. I could grab 2 of any resource I want other than stone. Instead, I chose to grab this. This gets me 3 different... This instead. This gets me 3 different resources. One of them's food, which isn't very valuable. The other 2 are kind of harder to come by. Stone especially at this point, so that seemed like a good idea. All right, let's pop into another round then. And we draw the card, and unfortunately this one's the fences card. Oh, no. People were thinking whether they could build fences or not. Well, they couldn't. It wasn't out yet. I'm used to it being out because it was out for a long time. In the last game I played, I thought it was one of the initials, but that's okay. Nobody had the wood for it yet. Anyhow, and now I will place the materials for everyone, and then we start over here with the new starting player. As we're keeping the balance of balls up in the air juggling, even for just one player, is painful. So I wanted a grain, and I paid my food to get the grain from this poor asshole. And now, you know, I was counting on maybe the sow grain coming up. That would be useful. Start getting a regular harvest of grain and increase my fields. But it didn't, and I certainly wouldn't want to pick it first since I'm the only person who could do it. So I was interested in the seasonal worker, right? Oh no, I can. I have no occupations. I see this and I think it's an occupation. I'm confused. They're not that distinguished. Yeah, so I can actually play this, which is what I want to do because I'm able to get a free occupation on this one. This is really valuable because I can get grain and or vegetables later on for my farms by just playing the day laborer card. It's only 1 grain if I can read correctly, but this stuff is hard to come by, you know. So I think I'm going to be going into planting and things like that. Yeah. It's an important early resource. So these 2 players grabbed wood resources. And then we came over to him. And, you know, even with this puppeteer that lets me put things in, I wanted to get the market crier out because when I do a take a grain, I get an additional grain and a vegetable. really am going to need to plow some fields too, but however, I have to keep in mind that whatever I'm doing, I need to figure out a way to get food. The fact that I had to pay 2 food for this, I was okay in food, I guess, sort of, kind of close. But yeah, these guys are set as long as they don't spend their food. That guy has tons and is just fine. But I may well need, with these 2 players, to take one of these food gathering locations at some point, and they become more expensive. They become more important, so somebody else may grab them, and somebody may just grab it to force the begging card, because these guys, it's not just a dicky move. These guys are going to have good piles of food on them. He's the last player right now, so maybe he wants to do an improvement just to get the starting player back. I don't know. Remember everything that I did. Over here, grabbed the clay. There was a fair amount of it lying around, and it's useful towards building things that can cook me food. Might not be enough to get me there, because the sow fields and bake bread is one thing. Now it's going to come up. I got lucky though. Nobody took first player away from me. I think I'd have been in a tricky position otherwise, and would have to, maybe grab one of these food things or whatever as my first action. Otherwise, over here, what did we do? We're red. Grabbed some more wood. Intention to build fencing. This guy did build fencing. That opens him up to being able to grab all these sheep. Now, all those sheep, I can eat one of them, but I have to have some way to cook it. So we'll see. I've got enough clay for the fireplace there, but that may be a desirable choice for other people. And then over here, I used my market crier for the take a grain action, got myself some resources, and this changes the entire flavor of the game, that card, from the last time I played. Because it also gives a grain to every other player, which means everybody's kind of in the race. Now, he could have already planted, so it doesn't really change anything right away. But in my previous game, it was really, really hard to get grain or vegetables, and may not have been terrible. So the thing is, grain is really, really weird. If you plant it early, you can get a lot of fields working. You can produce all the food you need with your ovens and have, huge quantities of grain to play around with. But not really realizing that, I kind of puttered through, and more of the players went with animals than with vegetable farming. One person went heavily into vegetable farming, but they went later in the game. It kind of requires time to make it a good engine, and you got to get it started early, and this is about as early as you can get it started, really. I could have had, though, more fields to plant. 2 players short on food going into the next turn. And I always forget to let you know, I do remove the people. Sometimes I don't notice. But that's sort of the last step of the turn if there's no harvest. I'm going to have to brew tea, though, so I don't know if I'll be back up tonight. I completely forget. I'm enjoying this second playing more, and it kind of reminds me of that 2 minutes to midnight game over there, where I got a chance to play it by myself the first time, and then went back, and played it on video. And the second playing is just more enjoyable. The question is, how many Euros or that type of game do I play once, especially opposed, but whatever, and say, I don't like this because I can't understand what the fuck's going on in the game. Some of that being, things that I've alluded to, intuitive connection between what you're trying to do as opposed to some point salad type thing. Some of it's also the rule books. The rule book to this didn't give me any real impression of, here are the paths that, we kind of set up as the obvious ones, so that players could kind of follow an obvious path. This is because Euro players, I guess for them, the enjoyment is trying to crack even the most basic puzzle. Well, I mean, I look at whoever played this before, who owned it before, the scores they had, their first scores were kind of shitty. Not too bad, better than mine. But the point is, their scores got tighter and tighter, and it required several games for people to kind of get the feeling and not just sort of luck into the right combination. I don't find games where you're trying to figure out what the combination is that works to get you through the game to be particularly interesting. First of all, once you figure out what combinations work, what things you have to do, well, then the game has sort of lost, the main thing that I think people are wanting from it. And yes, I browse games. I look at them, at a ridiculous pace and don't sit on for any length of time. But I don't get that much pleasure out of the frustration of kind of throwing darts at the wall or whatever and hoping some of them hit in the right, somehow hit the dartboard. I like to be able to see the dartboard, and I don't feel like most of these Euros most of the modern ones tend to give me that dartboard. They don't give me a hint through what I would say is an association with the subject matter. It doesn't matter how much theme there is to it, and the fact that like sheep have to be slaughtered and cooked and whatever, and there's cards that do all of that. That doesn't really help much. And so if you're giving me a very large puzzle that's always going to stay the same, what you're doing is you're giving me a large puzzle to make the problem harder to keep my interest. Well, I don't have that much interest, right? If the puzzle is small enough, for example, Dominion, every time a Dominion game is set up, you have a different puzzle, right? A different set of cards that you have to associate. Okay, how do I make this engine work? There's some base concepts there, but it gets its replayability from that. I've seen people who really like these. They play them a couple of times. They understand the game. They know how to make an engine work. And then, sort of their idea of how to make it stay fun is to try kind of weird things and see if some other engine that, just to try to see if they can do something different. To try to milk some kind of pleasure out of the game when it's maybe not, solved is a strong word, but it's pretty much clear, what you have to do. And when you take away player conflict and interaction from a game, you're really, I don't know, you're solving a puzzle that you've already solved and trying to see if you can do it quicker or something, a little bit more efficiently. I don't know. Yeah. Now the game, I know it has solo roles, which will definitely be. I'm wondering, I think it holds 2 players as well. I don't recall. See, we have. These are 3-player and 5-player. Maybe it does not allow for 2. I guess it does not. Which would be kind of a pain because I kind of got this because I thought my wife and I would enjoy playing something with like this sort of the little animals. I don't remember what it said about the animals. I thought they'd be the wooden animeeples, not something somebody bought at Walmart or whatever in the toy section. Those, though, I mean, I use little animals like that, or I used to back when I did minis with role playing. Anyway, actually going to go brew that tea now. I went for a long walk today. I'm not expecting to get much done, but I figured I'll do this last turn of the period, which I got to keep in mind. First of all, I've got that wood. I got to figure out who is owed that. That's the private forest, I think. Yeah. Okay. So he'll be getting that before the card is turned. But the other thing is, everybody must feed their people, which means these two players have some concerns that they have to try to make sure, and we know what this card is going to be. It's got to be the sow. They have to make sure that they get their food in place, because the penalty of missing, even by a little bit, is quite heavy. Not worth whatever other little advantages you might get off your plays. There are a couple of food spaces available on the board. Two of them, two of them will be large enough for either player to be able to get what they need. The 2 point for day labor only works if you have something like the seasonal worker here and get something that works. And he's got a complicated problem because he's got grain and that could, so he's going first and has sort of the most interesting, which is if I build, say, a fireplace or something that can convert grain into food, and then as my second action, I could do the sow and or bake bread. And, with 4 clay, I have no stone. So this would probably be the best. I could actually do this, which would only get me 3 food. So I'd be missing a food. So that route, that would be sort of the most appealing way to go, isn't going to do it. Also, even if I do that, I pretty much, I have to buy the fireplace or whatever first, which means I'm not going to be getting the baked bread action because somebody else could take it. Notably, this guy could take it because he wants to sow food. Now, he's got his own food problems and maybe is more concerned with grabbing a food space than he is with anything else. Anyway, I got to throw down the resources. Boy, there's a lot of sheep available. And he's set up to grab them. To bread is not the only way to produce food in this game, other than just grabbing it by fishing or whatever. There are other things kicking around, but I don't have the resources to build them. So I'm looking at something like the joinery, which 1 wood could get me 2 food. That's not going to be enough here, but it could be used in conjunction with something like the day laborer. Pottery, same kind of thing. The basket maker, same kind of thing. But in all cases, those require stone. He has no stone. He can't even grab the second stone, which these guys each require to be able to build it. So he's, kind of inflexibly forced into a certain position. The question, though, is, do I need to grab a food thing first? Or can I kind of cheat and take something more important first? Well, less important, but more demanded. Something like plow a field. Bake bread. Sow or bake bread. So that I could drop the grain and get the grain started. That's going to be a hard call, because he could get knocked out of the game by one of these guys being a dick and taking one of the food chits. But yeah, that knocks him out. He won't be he'll have a penalty card and whatever. It throws him back quite far, but it's also going to set back whoever does it. Because taking that food action instead of something that's more valuable. So I'll probably do a die roll for that. I didn't want to take the risk. He also didn't want to give an advantage to the guy who gets a bonus off traveling players, but he grabbed his food. That's enough to survive. Not sure whether anyone's going to be a dick. We'll see. Neither of these was a dick to him to begin with. Over here, built a bunch of fences, but this guy grabbed the sheep because next time around, this guy could grab them. So it became, you know, the commodity that people might actually want that I want as well. So it's important to my path forward. Over here, though, this guy decided to take the risk. Now, it's a moderate risk. I would be getting one begging card if I end up doing day labor. So I planted my vegetables in a garden. I'm going to be getting a vegetable back, which is the one I just spent. And I have a pretty good supply of vegetables. So I don't think he's the guy who really wants vegetables. Like, there's one player who has a lot of cards set up to help them run vegetables, and that might be this guy. With like able to make schnapps and stuff. Onward. Working our way around. What the hell happened? Plowed a field. Grabbed some clay, hoping to get into the animal market. But this guy's ahead of me, and he had enough clay, which he did not spend, to build a fireplace, which will allow him to change sheep into food. That's kind of important because he's running out of space already. He's got 4 sheep in here. That's going to give him 1. He can keep it as a pet. But since you can only do this during harvest, it might make sense for me to kill a sheep right away. And then, that meant since nobody screwed me over, I could grab the food with the traveling players. I kind of liked the big horde of food being out there because it would mean that I'd be able to grab an occupation, but I need the food, you know, and I don't have something else that was going to give me food easily. So, and by the way, this card and this card work really poorly together because I'm going to be handing out grain to people if I use this. And that means people are less likely to do the take a grain because they will be capable of planting their fields very quickly. Of course, I'm going on the vegetable route, which works pretty well. After everything comes back, then we'll do the harvest. I'll come back for that. The harvest phase is luckily placed right here. The other part of the game, you pretty much know. It sticks in pretty well. You're doing it every round, so it's not that big a deal. So, everybody who has planted stuff gets one of them off that. And you can see over time, the stuff that I planted one year will keep cropping up on other years. Again, totally has nothing to do with how farming works, but whatever. Okay. I don't think anybody had anything else that happens at this moment. Now we go to the feeding phase, and nobody had any newborns. So everybody's going to have to spend 4 food. Now, I want to check and make sure that nobody has food production capability that I'm neglecting. The way we talked about that sheep being killed. I have something around 11, yeah. Okay. And this guy wants to eat 4 food, but I can do this at any time. A lot of those conversions are not at any time, so I will not expend this because it doesn't have to be done during the harvest. Okay. Now we go to the breeding phase. Only one person has animals. He has 2 or more sheep, so he gets a sheep as his cute little bed warmer. And that is it. And we move up into stage 2. And I wonder how long this video has been. I kind of want to load this one up simply because it covers the harvest part of the game. And this is really, at this point, we're kind of at the, hey, people have started to define their strategy a little bit. The other thing was kind of just show you the mechanisms in play. But now at the first harvest, I think it makes sense to go into, to load this one up. So I'll do that. What the hell?